Okay, next item, a special town meeting. Board to consider to vote to call a special town meeting for the authorization of a special legislation for an agreement with North Reading for potable water service. And I'll, Mr. Town Manager, do you have an update for us? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By way of a brief history, as the board is aware now, we took an article to a special town meeting to enter into a 99-year agreement with North Reading to provide them with water. We've provided North Reading with water for the past 44 years. We're currently providing them with water under the existing IMA, which is the acronym for an intermunicipal agreement, through June 30th, 2019. From that point on, the town of North Reading was planning to move forward with connecting to the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority, the MWRA. Before I go any further, I just want to acknowledge Mark Clark here, who is the Acting Director of Public Works for North Reading. Thank you, sir, for joining us this evening, coming from your own meeting. As the board recalls, town meeting voted to amend the article, which would have provided either party with the ability to opt out after the 20th year. Subsequent to that vote, which passed overwhelmingly, we went to North Reading at a joint meeting last Wednesday. What was very clear at that meeting was that the most important factor to North Reading, as we expected it to be, was the permanency of a water supply. And their concern, which they made very clear to us, was it was about the resource more than it was the cost of the resource, of course, being water. So from there, we looked at all the options before the town, and the only option in order to proceed was to go back to town meeting and request permission to file a home rule petition that is identical to the one passed by North Reading's town meeting, which is to enter into a 99-year agreement to move forward. So I like to think that we've all learned something from each town meeting that we have the privilege of attending. One thing I certainly learned is that we did not adequately educate the public the first time around. I think there was a great deal more that we could have done. We didn't anticipate some of the questions, very good questions that did come up, but we heard the questions, and I think that we can be responsive to the questions and the concerns and include them in a long-term agreement while also being responsive to the number one and really only outstanding concern of North Reading's at this point, which is the permanency factor. So tonight, what I'm requesting, or respectfully requesting of the Andover board, is to call for a special town meeting to open and close the warrant and have one warrant article, which will be identical to Article 1 of the special town meeting of last month. What I've included before you this evening are two documents. A very straightforward memo that I'm not going to read through unless you would like me to. What we've done is to categorize or summarize the questions. Why is a long-term agreement beneficial to the town of Andover? Why 99 years? What is the rate that North Reading customers would pay for water? How will the agreement impact Andover's water supply? And why the $95,300 annual credits? And this summarizes many of the questions, and we've done a lot of work in watching the video and watching it again and really trying to get down to a summary format. So what we're going to do, providing the board does in fact call for a special town meeting, is provide residents with the opportunity to dive as deep as they want into the material. We've put together a very comprehensive 16, 17 slide presentation that, along with this memo, will be available as early tomorrow in a portal on the homepage of the website. In addition, IT has put together a tool in which residents can come put in their address, see what their water bill is today, what it would be without North Reading. So you really can have a personal feel to what the individual impact would be to your water bill. So there are going to be multiple opportunities to learn about this. We'll also do a very widespread public outreach campaign, and that will begin immediately if the board decides to move forward. North Reading met this evening. They did not take a vote, however, they decided, and I will defer to Mark, to go down the same course they were going down leading up to our special town meeting, to provide Andover with the opportunity to reconsider the warrant article at a date not to exceed the first week in April, so the week of the 2nd. So to have a town meeting between now and the 6th of April.
Did you want to?
Sure, should I stand?
Yeah, sure. Introduce yourself. Thank you for coming, by the way.
Sure, thank you. Again, I'm Mark Clark. I am the acting DPW director for all of 3 weeks in North Reading. But beyond that, for 23 plus years, I've been the water superintendent there. So I have a little bit of the history of the two towns. And I would say I would say thank you to Andover. We've had, I think, a good relationship over the 20 plus years that I've worked here. I would also like to say thank you tonight because Jim Rivard from Woodward and Curran came to our Board of Selectmen meeting, did have the chance to answer some questions, so we appreciate you making that resource available to us. Tonight, as you recall from last Wednesday night's meeting, our board had kind of set a self-imposed deadline on themselves to make a decision relative to the proposal that you people had put on the table of enacting a special town meeting with one item on it to reconsider this item. I think the town manager here has summarized this correctly. The number one issue with us is the permanency of this agreement. As one of our selectmen said last week, if you decide to opt out of an agreement with us, it basically increases the water rates to the residents of Andover. It leaves us in a position where we're going over a cliff, where there's not necessarily 20 or 25 or 75 years down the road the option to go to the MWRA that's available to us today. That is the number one issue in North Reading. That is the number one benefit to going to the MWRA. I think both communities are well aware that there's a benefit to Andover in terms of the revenue coming from North Reading. There's a benefit to North Reading that we could avert some capital costs, and in the long run it likely would be much cheaper for us to continue to purchase water from the town of Andover. Tonight, the Board of Selectmen decided basically not to make a decision, but to allow you guys to move forward to see what you were going to do tonight. I believe there'll be some language, and it might have already been sent to you. But what was presented to our board was that there would be a special town meeting the last week of March, and I believe that's been revised just due to your schedule here. So we're basically looking at that. I'm basically here just to answer questions. I'm sorry. So the selectmen tonight voted not to take any action tonight. They voted to see what happens with what happens here at your board tonight, and then to basically follow the process through. We did back in September impose another self-imposed deadline on ourselves that by April 30th we would make a decision one way or the other. So I think we're looking to let that play out and just see where we go from here.
Well, I want to thank you for coming, and if you would pass along to the board that we appreciate their willingness to continue the discussions, and I'm optimistic that we'll have a vote tonight to support that, and hopefully we'll have another vote at a special town meeting, because I think this is something that, for the reasons that you said, is very beneficial to both Andover and North Reading, and that it's something that personally I believe we need to continue to the benefit of our residents, as well as being a good neighbor, continuing to be a good neighbor to North Reading.
Thank you.
Anybody on our board we want to go ahead? I was just going to ask for comments from
Yeah, please. A few comments, Alex. One, Andrew, you said the community wasn't educated enough. I'll say the entire board wasn't educated enough, and I'll just leave it at that.
I'll second that.
I watched the meeting that I was unable to attend on Tuesday, the Andover Board of Selectmen meeting, or Wednesday, and then I watched the North Reading meeting as well, and I've had subsequent conversations with Chairman Prisco and Selectman O'Leary, and I told Chairman Prisco he was spot on. Really, most of his comments during that meeting were spot on, expressed my desire to both of them to, make this work, make this happen. I clarified with Selectman O'Leary, we had a little joke that I was actually a computer engineering major and not a math or English major. But we had a joke about that. So had a very positive discussion with both of them. In order for us to move this forward, I am in full support of having a special town meeting. There was question, though, from their board, and I didn't get into it with Chairman Prisco or Selectman O'Leary. There was question about change in the board makeup on our side, Andrew, or maybe the gentleman from North Reading. I don't know if there are any comments about that this evening that would be pertinent to help us select an appropriate date for the special.
I think Dan, so you're asking if the makeup of our board will change, in fact.
Yeah, no, they had expressed
Yeah.
a concern at the last meeting. Gee, Andover's makeup of the board is going to change, and there was some concern about that. Does North Reading have a concern about as to when this special meeting occurs? I know we said okay before April 1st, but does North Reading prefer us to try to do it, before the election or after the election, or is there no preference? I guess is my question. Because one of the things that I learned in watching the meeting from last week is, the North Reading Board of Selectmen, they were looking for us to have our special town meeting in December, and I didn't know that, and and I'm sure that that's something that helped, fuel some of the anxiety that they were looking for us to really get together and meet on this in December, and I don't know why we didn't learn that North Reading wanted this in December. So, that's why I was saying Chairman Prisco was pretty much spot on with most of his comments in the meeting.
So if I may, I spoke with the town administrator of North Reading earlier today, and I subsequently spoke to him during our meeting this evening. Due to the availability of facilities and the holiday, the North Reading board was fine if we needed to schedule a meeting the week of April 2nd, so they extended it out a week if necessary. Larry and I have done quite a bit of work looking at what days would even be possible, given what is available, and really there's 3 dates, and if it's appropriate, could I run through them? The first being the 21st of March, which it would be a struggle to get it into the newspaper. It's 2 weeks. That would be tough. The next is the 29th, which is Holy Thursday, and we've heard from both communities that would be a tough day. And the third day is the 4th, which is post-holidays, and the Collins Center is available on the 4th.
And if you look at the Finance Committee book, that would have to, a vote would have to be, and Janie Moffett, the chair of the Finance Committee, is here. You would need a recommendation or a statement from us. My guess is the 23rd.
I think so. So if we go backwards from the 4th, the report needs to be a week ahead of time out to the residents. This could probably be done in-house because it's one article. However, we need to share more information, so it's not going to be one page.
Louder, please.
Louder, Dan, just a little
I'm
louder.
sorry,
You
Dan.
can come up, Janie. Don't you come up?
I'll speak louder.
Okay.
I'll sit in the front and speak louder. So that means it should be in residents' homes by the 28th? Right? Does that make sense?
Should be in the mail by the 28th.
In the mail, okay, by the 20th,
28th.
20th.
For an April 4th.
Yeah, that's a
date.
1 week advance
That's
notice.
7 days for special.
Right.
Yep.
All right. And if it's printed in-house, I don't have Christine right here, but I don't know. Do you know time frame, days? We'd probably have to have it done by the 25th, so your 23rd meeting,
Right,
April
so,
23rd.
so Dan, it would be,
March
it would be
23rd.
March 23rd.
March. It would be voted on by this board for that recommendation.
Probably 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks.
19th.
2 weeks.
No, 19th.
And of course, we're in the throes for preparing for town meeting. It'd be wonderful if this could be pushed to town meeting, but I'm understanding from Letty, you need it sooner.
But, well, do we? I mean, we're taking that. I know it was offered by the members that attended the North Reading Board. But
I mean, from a...
didn't they initially say that the end of April was their decision point? I know it was cutting it close, but...
Actually, they said today was their decision point, and they moved it out. And they said really within 30 days. Tonight was March 5th was their date.
Right,
originally.
but they didn't take a vote. So.
Well, because of the conversation.
Right, but that was the time that they wanted to pull the trigger, not the time that was kind of the drop dead date that they had to decide, right? Isn't that, I heard April 30th, isn't it? Did I not hear that?
Initially, back in October, that was their drop dead date from informing the
Okay.
MWRA that they were...
So they created a self-imposed deadline of tonight to say, okay, we should have everything we need by March 5th. We'll do the joint meeting, and then tonight, of course, they didn't take a position because they
They did take a position. They took a position to let us go forward. The decision tonight was, do they take a vote? I don't want to put words in my...
Well, actually, I want to be clear on that. Did they take a position to give Andover more time, or did they take a position that they...
I would concur with Selectman Vespoli that the North Reading Board took the position that if you're willing to do a special town meeting and I believe the language is going to come by April 6th, that North Reading would postpone making any decision tonight.
Okay.
They were actually consistent to what they told us on Wednesday night.
Okay, but that expectation was set by our board that attended their meeting and
They
offered
asked-
that up,
They
right?
asked the soonest, because we said the only way we could come back, because we had a town meeting vote, was to go to another town meeting.
No, true, but
The
you-
mechanics of it.
Understood, but there was an intermission in that meeting, and our board, the three, Selectman Kowalski and I were not in attendance, but the three that were, along with the town manager, took an intermission, came back and offered that up.
Because they asked if what's the quickest
Right.
it could be done. Could it be done within 30 days, was their
Okay.
question.
So if I may read from the town administrator,
And nothing was committed to that night.
he says, the board agreed by consensus to allow the process originally mapped out last fall to continue to play out. The board was agreeable to a town meeting being held the week of April 2, 2018, but required that the engineering and other data...
A little louder.
The board was agreeable to a town meeting being held the week of April 2, 2018. We initially said by March 29th. And other data required by North Reading be provided by March 9th, 2018. And it's my understanding, Jim and Chris have already worked that out with their consultants, and there's no problem there.
That's correct.
So this is crunch time. I mean, we have a full town meeting coming up, and it's going to be a difficult thing, and I guess part of this we have to decide. We have less than 3 weeks to educate our town and get them to come to a special town meeting. The Finance Committee, as you know, first time around special town meeting in January, unanimously voted to support this. We had some reservations about the 99 years, but we felt for the rate, the taxpayers, it was going to be a significant impact, and that we were thinking more broadly. You combine increased water rates with increased tax rates, decisions on the table to be building or renovating 2 schools, firehouse. We have a lot of increases on the taxpayer, and I think if you look at all of those things together, it would make the most sense. We would again encourage the people to vote to go ahead to do this. So our committee would.
I'm having trouble hearing, Alex. Maybe it's
I'm
just
sorry,
me,
Dan.
but I'm having trouble hearing.
It's going to be difficult
it-
logistically, but the Finance Committee says go for the special town meeting. And it's in the best interest of the ratepayers and the taxpayers of Andover.
Were you able to hear that, Dan?
Did you say the finance? No, I didn't.
Okay.
The finance committee said no to a
You
special
said-
town meeting. Is that what I
Come up
heard?
a little
Yes.
closer, Janie.
You
just-
said
just-
yes, Dan.
Oh, okay, all right,
Let's
all right,
go
all
for
right.
it.
That's confusing.
Go for
So
special
maybe-
town meeting, Mr. Kowalski. Got
So
it. I'm in
maybe-
your chair.
So, yeah.
Janie Moffett.
Are you on the ballot?
Hi, Dan, how are you?
Good, Janie, good,
We're
Janie.
we're having a meeting
so-
downstairs, but I came upstairs because we did discuss this, knowing that you were going to be doing this tonight. We did vote to do in January. It was unanimous. We were for the agreement with North Reading, and we continue to hold that position. It's going to be difficult for us. We have a lot to do going forward, but that's where we're at. So I think it's the best.
Awesome to hear.
Good.
Awesome to hear, and I'm glad it's nice and clear. So thank you so much, Janie.
You're welcome. Thank you. We have a meeting downstairs.
I think to the point of one of the lessons, then there are many that got us to this point. There are many, and I think there will be time to certainly do there's been several things talked about already as far as things that did happen or did not happen, more did not happen, that got us to this point. But certainly one of the things that was apparent was when we set the town meeting for this article, leaving the warrant open as we did, created a situation where we were holding the town meeting for one thing, and that was this issue, Article 1. And we ended up with 14 articles. What we should have done is we were contemplating today, opening it up, inserting, and closing. Because certainly it dilutes the message, and I think in that particular town meeting, we had a lot of folks there for another couple of articles, and it really, it was one of the many, I'd say, faults in this process, systemic faults that got us here. And actually, it came up last week while we were in North Reading when we talked about how it was approached by North Reading and how we approached it. And it was, I think the question was asked at the time, can we put this and turn it on, put it in, close the warrant? I think the advice was let's leave it open. And I think, that was a hard lesson learned, I'll tell you. But that was one of many, many points along the line that put us in the place that we did. So
I just want to recap what we're talking about doing here. We had subcommittee negotiations for an agreement. We called a special town meeting at the end of January to vote on a 99-year agreement.
we never actually called a subcommittee, but it was de facto.
Okay. The vote of town meeting and that article with just a 99-year agreement was unacceptable to town meeting, which prompted an amendment to put in a termination provision for both sides. Some of us on the board actually thought there was a termination provision related to it when we went into town meeting, but it got amended by town meeting. And now we are talking about, just so I understand what the plan is not retrying this again at our annual town meeting, but calling a special town meeting, which would be the August 2nd, somewhere like that. April 4th, to revisit this, and we're going to basically have a do-over, right? We're going to have the exact same article that was presented, deemed unacceptable by town meeting, amended by town meeting, and we're going to basically take the same approach, except take the approach that, well, town meeting didn't really have all the facts. If we just educate them better, okay, that we're going to be more successful. I gather that's the strategy. And sometime during this month, leading up to April 4th, we're going to find time for outreach and voter education so that they are ready to go and understand what's going on April 4th. And we're going to do that in the middle of an election cycle and endless budget meetings and what have you in preparation for our normal annual town meeting. So did I capture that right from just a timeline point of view? That's what's being proposed, right? Okay.
Be a challenge.
I'm sorry?
It will be a challenge.
Well, you could put it that way. That's more than a challenge.
I think you captured it right, though.
Okay, well, and let that stand alone, because I think the bigger concern is that we're going back to town meeting to basically say, you remember that thing we brought to you in January that you didn't like and you amended? Well, we're going to come back to you again. And we didn't feel that you got all the information right, so we're going to kind of give you the information all over again, and hopefully you change your mind. And I just think that going back without a termination provision or opt-out provision is, I'm just not sure what you're going to do. I mean, I wouldn't have supported the water agreement without some type of termination provision. I thought it was in there. I voted for it on that basis. I think Selectwoman McGregor's instincts were right when she was negotiating to put in some type of provision for 99 years. I heard somebody at town meeting said something like, 99 years. My gosh, lots of things can happen in 99 years that you don't even foresee. This means we would have had an agreement before World War I or something. There were very good points about the risks of a 99-year agreement. So to me, whether it was 5 years with penalties or 5 years after 20, some type of termination mechanism strikes me as making sense. And I think that's the elephant in the room, which is there will be none. The condition here is that we're going to go through all this effort, go back to town meeting with the exact same article that was rejected. And my fear is town meeting is going to look at all of you that support that and say, what part of no don't you understand? So I'm only one vote. I think clearly I'm alone on this one, but I think that you're going to have trouble doing this. Now, we talk about North Reading's demand for permanency. I totally understand that. I listen to them, and if I was on their board, I'd probably think the same thing. However, Selectman Kowalski has done some analysis that shows, and Dan, maybe you can chime in, North Reading, if they come with Andover, they save a significant amount of money. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, my initial calculation was incorrect, but it's about $30 million over 20, 25 years.
Okay, so to me, it's really, and again, we can't reopen negotiations because that's kind of been taken off the table. We are where we are, but to me, it's North Reading had a choice between permanency and saving money. They want both. They want permanency with us without termination provision, and they want to save the money. And I just, I don't think, because it doesn't matter what we think as a board, quite frankly, it's up to town meeting. I don't think there's any way town meeting is going to sign off on a 99-year deal. You can give them all the education you want. You can tell them all about the benefits, and I understood. We talked about the water rates. We talked about all that. I just think that we're going down a path that I'm not sure we can deliver on. And I think, I'm going to be at least one voice that says it now.
I mean, I think the little water rate calculator is kind of silly, because we don't want to try to scare people into voting for what they think is the right thing. But I think we screwed it up. We, the town of Andover, screwed up this whole thing in its presentation to the board and its presentation to the community. I personally don't think it's going to be harmful for us to represent it to the community so that we can, feel that we did due diligence here. Because, I would look back and say, wow, we really messed that up. I want to personally try to fix it a little bit and let the community make a decision. And I think that there are ways that we may mitigate the risk that exists with a 99-year agreement. And those are some of the things that I think we need to discuss. I don't agree with just saying, let's take the existing terms that are out there and stick it on a slide and present it to town meeting again. We have to firm up some of those issues around those terms. We can still possibly preserve the initial set of terms, but we can refine those terms and include additional terms that we are committing to in order to mitigate some of the risk of a 99-year agreement. So I have some thoughts on that, which we can discuss if there's time.
Dan, I got to be honest. Watching watching the joint meeting with our selectmen and with their selectmen last week, I don't see any appetite whatsoever on the part of the North Reading board to hit the reset button or reopen any other terms of this agreement. In fact, I think one of their board members asked Selectwoman Gregory about, can you clarify? Are you saying we're going to reopen terms? And Selectwoman Gregory said, no, I'll let you speak for yourself, but it sounded like you were saying, no, absolutely not. We're not looking to renegotiate. We're not touching the other terms. There's nothing planned here, Dan, as far as I hear, and I'm open to hearing more. I'm hearing that we are just going to bring it back, just like we did in January, like Groundhog Day, and see if we can get a different result by educating the residents. And what I fear is the elephant in the room is that termination provision. The same people that showed up are going to be showing up now, and they're going to be saying, where is it?
I
Because-
think,
Dan?
Go ahead, Laura.
I think the key difference is, I don't think the town meeting attendees were aware that by voting to make that amendment, they were functionally eliminating the deal.
Right.
So with that information, will the vote be the same? It certainly could be the same, but we don't know. And I think the public needs to understand that by making that change, they are voting to not have this deal, not have North Reading as a participant in our water system, and therefore not get that financial benefit over the next 100 years.
Yeah.
99
Well,
years.
I mean, I mean, I don't know about that, Laura. I mean, people have heard 99-year deal, no opportunity for renegotiation. That's what they heard.
Right.
So I think that's why it failed 2-1. I think we can still, do due diligence here and try to figure out how can we pull this out of the trash, so to speak, out of the sink. But I don't agree with the comments that were made at the meeting in North Reading, where the discussion was, well, these are the terms, we're not going to talk about any changes to the terms. I think that if we want a 99-year agreement, I think we can look at those terms and augment those terms. We know that they want 5% under Tier 1, but there are, I think, other things that we might be able to do to add to those terms, and that's why we need to negotiate with them a little bit more as opposed to that meeting last week. Because if you want to move forward with just having that meeting last week and say, okay, we're just going to present the exact same terms, I'm with Bob. It's not going to work. What we have to do is, look at those terms that are out there and say, how can we augment them? And, and personally, I get a couple ideas on how we can try to improve it.
Dan, I don't think there's any appetite by North Reading's board, but I'd like to hear from each Paul, Alex, and Laura, who were at the meeting. Do any of you have any sense that they would be open to changing any of the terms and conditions that have been already pre-negotiated?
I want to hear from the North Reading. You were about to say something before we...
I stood up initially to address the permanency issue. Those who were members of the subcommittee will remember from the very first meeting, our Selectman O'Leary came in and said, we're all set. If you watch North Reading's town meeting back in June, North Reading appropriated construction money in order to construct facilities in Reading, in North Reading, and on the line between the two to construct a pump house to allow us to draw water from the MWRA. We've fully appropriated the cost to go to the MWRA in terms of construction. Again, the statement at the initial meetings, and he said this a number of times, we're all set. Comments back to him were, it's about the money. You can save a lot of money if you stay with Andover. And the comment that came back was, again, we're all set. We've appropriated money to go the other direction. So the permanency, for North Reading, it is by far the driving issue here. This is our water supply we're talking about. And again, I've been in the water business for 30 years. It's scary to say that we've extended it by 2 years, but that at June 30th of 2019, we don't know where our water's coming from. That's a very difficult thing. And it's difficult, I understand, from your side of the table because you have the resource here. We need that.
I was going to make a comment about that, and I think it was a little inflammatory to say that, North Reading could turn on their faucets and water wouldn't come out because Andover shut them off. I think that was a little inflammatory, and I told Selectman O'Leary that. But that would never happen. Simple as that. That would never happen. And I understand a lot of the frustration associated with permanency has to do with the amount of time that it took to sign an IMA extension. And I sit back and still scratch my head and wonder where it all went wrong here as well. And I think, regarding the IMA extension that took 5 years to put together, that covers 3 years, I sit back, scratch my head, and I think that there's culpability on both sides on that one. And a lot of it goes back to what Mr. Briscoe said back in, back where in 2014, Andover told North Reading, sorry, we can't provide you with 100% of your water, and that had to do with it.
We could spend, an hour, Dan, on what went wrong on this. We could go back
and I
5
don't wanna
years,
go
and it's
there.
not productive right now. I think you raised a good point, Bob, a good question. It was my first time in front of that group last week. I wanted to sit in front of them eye to eye, and I think the number one thing was the out. That was the
Meaning that they won't agree to
that was
any.
the issue that was on there, on the table.
No,
Now, I
but
know
to be
that-
clear,
well,
though,
let
they
me-
won't
let me-
agree, right?
The terms were the terms, and I know that the final agreement hasn't been negotiated. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that there's another
Well,
step. Can I, Dan?
Hold on, Dan.
I'm sorry, I will, sorry.
The contract itself has not been finalized. There's no contract. There's a set of terms. And is that correct?
Right, it says, in the warrant article, it says, if you just enter. I'm sorry. It says, to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of North Reading for potable water for a term of up to 99 years on such terms and conditions that the board determines are in the best of interest of the town. So, terms and conditions will be negotiated by the respective boards of selectmen. And that's exactly how it's happened in the past.
But okay, so this is what concerns me about, we've got a warrant article, which is a home rule petition that we need functionally in order to have an agreement longer than 25 years. And then you have these terms that have been negotiated. And I think they're artificially being separated, because they're not. They're together. Okay, they're not part of the article, I understand, because that's not how the legislature works, but they're effectively...
It enables you.
It's effectively one deal, whether it's part of the article or not. It's one deal. And from what I see, and again, I've tried to focus here on going forward, not looking backward, is that North Reading negotiated in good faith, felt they had an agreement that had no termination provision. It went to our town meeting as such, and the town meeting itself, not the selectmen, the town meeting said 99 years with no out,
Want to
no
renegotiate,
termination.
essentially, yeah.
And they amended it. There's nothing this board can do about what town meeting is going to do. And they amended it. Now, when this board went before the North Reading board last week, I saw the North Reading board looking, basically saying, we negotiated in good faith with you, and you didn't get the job done. You didn't get from your town meeting what you said you could get. And now we're in a bind, and they were looking to us to say, how are you going to fix it? Now, fixing it isn't just saying, well, we'll have another meeting, and we'll do it April 4th. That's not fixing it. Fixing it is, if we believe strongly there should be a termination provision, or perceive our residents will think that, and they say absolutely not, then I think you've got maybe an irreconcilable difference. And believe me, if I was on North Reading's board, I get the permanency, but especially where Andover controls the resource, I would probably be seeing it through their lens. But I think there's a spectrum of permanency. There's a big spectrum between 99 years, no termination whatsoever, and a 5-year out with a 5-year revenue penalty. There's room in there to do it, but I'm sensing from North Reading that they don't want anything to do with any type of termination provision whatsoever. And I think that puts us from a town, not a board point of view, from a town meeting point of view, in a bind. I think that puts us in a bind. I mean, you can call your special town meeting, which I think is also going to be criticized for, just procedurally how this is being done. And you can bring it before town meeting, and I just think you're not going to get over that hurdle. And what I heard from that North Reading board I heard no interest in revisiting, as Selectman Kowalski is suggesting, in revisiting any of the other terms. I think that, in fact, I think they would find that offensive, because they negotiated in good faith. They've got this far. In their view, we didn't deliver. So it's our job to kind of fix it, not their job. That was the sense I got from that joint board meeting.
And if I could just address, again, this is the representative from North Reading speaking. Tonight's meeting of the Board of Selectmen, they put up on the screen the summary of terms that were voted on back in August and September. They were exactly what they were, and I don't think there's room for renegotiation of those terms. I think you're correct in what
Okay,
you're stating.
thank you, thank you.
The terms are the terms,
Thank you. And
including the permanency.
thank you. And I do need to, point out that agreement without the termination provision had my signature, but only because I didn't know the provision had been taken out. So technically, that agreement didn't really have 4 votes. It had 3 votes. Because if I had a chance to vote on it again, I wouldn't vote on it without a termination provision. So I just think we can tell North Reading we're going to do whatever we're going to do. This board can set a special town meeting. We can move forward. I'm just telling you, I don't think our town meeting is going to have it. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying it now so that we know what we're going into. And I think North Reading should understand, because they've already witnessed it.
And that's one person speaking.
That's all it is.
Fair
That's,
enough.
of course,
Okay.
that's all I can speak
Do we
for.
have a motion to move forward?
I move that the Board of Selectmen call a special town meeting for authorization of special legislation for the agreement with North Reading for potable water service, and that the meeting go forward on April 4th, 2018.
I'll second that.
Inside the line.
Motion made and second.
Can we have a little bit
And
more
motion,
discussion?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
also to sign the warrant for the special town meeting.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
It's early. It's 10 minutes to 10. So, one of the things that I think we've got to look at and think about with this agreement is we've got to put the time in, no matter how much time it is. So, I think continued discussion is good, and I appreciate the chairs for, allowing that. So, one of the things I was thinking about is, sure, North Reading isn't amenable to modifying the existing terms, but what about additional terms? What additional terms could we potentially negotiate at this point that may make North Reading may look at and be like, oh yeah, okay. One of the things I was thinking about was really a way to mitigate the risk associated with a 99-year deal. So what do you think about when you have a 99-year deal? You think about, well, what if we can't fulfill it? There's areas where we may need to expand upon in the agreement that might say, in the event X, Y, Z occurs, this agreement becomes null and void. So we further expand upon the existing terms. Another point is money. What happens when you have a 99-year deal? We have concerns of the financial impact to the town of Andover. So why couldn't we, as the town of Andover, consider setting up a special mitigation fund, a reserve fund, where we might allocate a certain percentage of our annual water revenue into this reserve fund that will obviously grow over time. So we pick a percentage, a dollar amount, and I emailed Donna Walsh.
Right?
What's that?
We can do that independently, right?
Yeah, but I mean, but those funds would be paid for from our water enterprise fund.
Right, but that's a.
But we could put this in the agreement, in essence, so that we could present this to town meeting and say, you know what we're going to do, town meeting, we want to set up this special water enterprise fund. We're going to fund it with a percentage of the annual revenue, and over time, this is going to grow. I sent an email to Donna Walsh, I think it was Saturday, and she provided me with a response. And, I said, Donna, just for giggles, I wanted her to do the math, and she provided it to me and she copied Andrew. I said, for giggles, if we put away $200,000 a year, based on the appropriate interest rate, what would that grow to? And I think I said 25 years, or I think
25 years.
I said 25 years, and her response was something like $11.8 million. So $12 million based on a specific rate of growth interest rate. So what if we, Andover, proposed an additional term? And then when we go to our town meeting, we throw that up there. Hey, this is an additional term that's in this agreement where we're going to help accrue a fund that might help address any unforeseen financial impacts that may, in the future, impact our ratepayers.
Right, and that doesn't even have to be, that's not a term for the agreement, that's.
Well, no, I would say,
outside the
I would say it
agreement.
would be a term for the agreement, so that we can say to North Reading, hey, this is how we're mitigating the risk of a 99-year agreement. We want you to not kind of reject or give us any opposition to that, because one of the challenges I see with this is that you've got a rough terms sheet, and what you're doing is you're asking town meeting to give the Board of Selectmen full authority in terms of what it approves. So if you have 5 issues on this rough term sheet, and then the Board of Selectmen then approves 8 issues, then if I were a taxpayer, I'd say, hey, I don't like issue number 7, and you threw that in at the last minute. You know, some of the things I've had discussions with people about, well, hey, I want to make sure that there's no annual cap that would be put into this agreement. So why couldn't we, Andover, say, put things in our term sheet that we know we will not agree to? Like, we will not agree to a final annual cap going into the agreement, so that we could present that to town meeting and say, town meeting, we're gonna agree to these terms, which are North Reading's terms. We're also proposing this additional term, kind of visual here, we're gonna propose an additional term that sets up a mitigation fund that we will fund appropriately. And North Reading, oh yeah, they're okay with that, you know, because their board said that they're okay with that.
Yeah, so-
And these are the things that will not appear. You will not see this in the agreement. You will not see a maximum percentage increase for Andover, for North Reading on an annual basis.
So we would have to do that very quickly.
Yes, exactly. And
We need another, internally, we need another meeting,
yeah,
separate.
yeah, we need a meeting
can't
to
do it,
talk
yeah.
about how, is there anything else we think that would be good to put in the agreement, or anything else that we think we want to definitely exclude from the agreement, so that when we go to town meeting, we say, this is what it includes, this is what it doesn't include. North Reading's on board with this, and oh yeah, these North Reading's original terms that they wanted to agree to. And then let town meeting decide based upon the risk mitigation that we put in.
We need North Reading as part of this.
And we definitely need North Reading.
And
But it was proposed. When you went to the North Reading meeting, didn't you propose, in fact, there was an attempt to vote it at our meeting to appoint a subcommittee to
They did not want to
basically.
open it back up.
They
did not wanna
had
open that-
zero, what you're talking about, Dan, may be valid, but the facts are you need somebody on the other side of the table
Yeah.
who's willing to entertain it.
Right, we haven't talked to them.
Well.
Well,
What
3
you're
members of the
saying-
board spoke with them.
Yeah, we
Didn't
didn't take any
necessarily
votes.
speak for me. I know,
Didn't
you
take any
know.
votes, just listen, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, you guys did a lot of listening, but this may be something North Reading's open to, and, we're not adjusting the original terms that they want. We're just refining what would go into the final
I think-
agreement.
I think we'd
Or
have
what
to
wouldn't go into it.
quickly
Yes.
come up with that and then meet with them, as soon as possible.
Yes.
Because if this is perceived as what they did talk about, then
Because I agree with Bob that if we go to town meeting and say, hey, these original terms, we're just going to explain it to you a little differently, I don't think that's going to work.
It
I wouldn't be very supportive of that
It
myself.
won't, and that's why I can't support this.
we've got to, okay, so we need another meeting. We need another discussion on this
Yeah.
as far as the specifics.
Yeah.
Our
Seems
board.
like
Our
we should
board.
vote on the
Yeah.
motion
And
first.
We've got to decide if we're going to do the special town meeting and take that vote now, and then set up a very quick.
Yeah, I
Meeting.
emailed the chair yesterday, Paul, I think, asking for a meeting to be scheduled for Thursday evening for us to continue discussion on this, because I anticipated us needing additional time. Does that work for everyone, that we might be able to have this additional discussion? Because we can always call it, and then I guess we could cancel it if we really needed to,
Yeah, again, I don't know, I feel like we're talking in circles here, because this board, yeah, you can set a special town meeting. You can vote on what was voted on in January, the same warrant article, because that's what North Reading's agreed to, but anything outside of that, not only do I think it's realistic, I think North Reading's already given us their answer. I think they've already said. Now, that doesn't mean depending upon this board vote, that the town manager can't go back, but I mean, it's really hard to get a consensus for their board. I think this board, the members that attended at North Reading, set the expectation that we're willing to fight. There was a majority of the board there.
We took no vote.
We didn't take a vote, but Alex, there were
We said the
3 members of the
only-
board there who proposed a special town
We
meeting.
said that was the only way we could act on it was the out. And the only way to do that was to go back to town meeting, the mechanics of it.
The mechanics of it are fine, but what I'm saying is what North Reading saw were the majority of the board, 3 members, whether there's a vote or not, step forward, offer to do an expeditious special town meeting at the end of March, beginning of April, in order
We
to
said we'd
vote.
offer to come back to the board
In order.
and take a
No,
vote. That's what we said. We did not.
Okay, fine. You
No, I
offer to
was
come
there.
back to the board to take a vote so that we can now take a vote to have a special town meeting at the end of March, beginning of April. Better?
The board can say no.
Okay.
The board can say no now and decide not to save the residents the 70 million over 10 years.
Yeah, let's not go down that path.
No,
Let-
I think it's important, Bob,
Yeah.
because the question is it worth it? Is it worth it to Andover to do this? Is it worth it to save the ratepayers? I mean, we're looking at every turn, and we heard a lot of them tonight, the increased capacity that people are asking to pay for. 2 schools, the CIP. Janie Moffett, who left, talked about the issues with the FinCom is looking at as well.
Yeah.
So this is one where we can reduce that increase. So if we don't think if I'm somebody that thinks it's worth it because of the significance of the savings to the ratepayer and to the taxpayer, if you don't think so, that's your opinion,
That's right.
okay?
That's right.
your opinion.
That's
This
right.
is-
But I
That's-
think, Dan is bringing up and I think it's up to the board members who were there and the town manager to give Dan your honest opinion, to tell him that this board, unless I read it wrong, which I don't think I did, they have no interest in reopening this. They simply are giving this town a do-over
Right.
on the exactly what happened in January that got messed up. And this board is saying, okay, we'll run it back to a special town meeting, and we'll present it and try it again. And I think that's a mistake on process, and I think it's a mistake on substance. Because I don't think our town meeting is going to consent to a 99-year deal without some type of provision. And that can take lots of different shapes. There's a lot of room between 99 years with no termination and 5 years. And if I was on North Reading's board, I would at least be amenable to saying, okay, is there something that looks like permanency that we feel comfortable with that isn't the one extreme end of the spectrum, 99 years, for their own sake, for North Reading's own sake. They've got a good partner with us. They've got less expensive water. It's a good deal, but holding on to this 99-year with no termination, I think is going to cost them the deal at town meeting. I don't care what the board does. I'm talking about town meeting. So I'm just being candid here with what I think this is going.
You don't want to look at them face to face, but you want to ask them that question. I mean, you didn't want to go to that meeting. 'Cause
I
you
thought
didn't
it was
want-
I
Yeah,
thought it was
understand.
unproductive
I understand.
to
But I'm
do
saying you're-
board-to-board
but
meetings. It
you're
was a nice show,
You're asking that.
but that's
meeting.
not how business should be conducted on a 99-year agreement, if you want to bring it up.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if we want to ask that question, in what forum, if we've got to do that, do we want to ask that question?
The town manager could easily have gone there and just talk to his contacts, let the full-time
isn't
staff do
advancing any
it. So
laws.
we are where we are. A motion's been made in a
It's
second, I
already been
guess.
done.
We want, personally, I want to, I don't want to ask Paul, Laura, and Bob to guess what was going through the minds of the North Reading folks. I mean, I watched that meeting. I'll say I watched that meeting because I was in New York City from Tuesday morning through Friday, Tuesday night or whatever it was, through Friday night. I had a 11-hour ride back from New York City on Friday, but
Express train?
yeah, the Express. So, I want to explore options. I don't like the idea of having the town manager and the town administrator engage
That's
each
part of
other.
what got us here, yeah.
I don't like the idea of a subcommittee because that's part of our problem as well. I want to sit there right in front of the North Reading Selectmen and talk through these issues. And, I apologize to the 2 selectmen that I spoke with, that I was unable to attend, but, primary work comes first, sorry. So I sit back and think, maybe there's other things that we can do. Maybe we can give them a 99-year term agreement where we then have 25-year IMAs on top of it. I don't know, but I want to be able to explore all options because, as Alex points out, I mean, this is 70 to 85, 90 million dollars over 25 years, times 4. So this is a lot of money. I mean, the Merrimack River, I mean, that is a resource that we're lucky enough to have full access to all that raw material that comes out of it, and we just clean it and send it on. I mean, I want everybody to have a green lawn in Andover. It might not be right, but I want people to use that water because that helps the town. So I'm all for sitting with the folks from North Reading. I had as I said, a great conversation. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see any negotiation. I can tell you right now, I did no negotiation. I spoke of no terms, with the selectmen. I want us to have a nice face-to-face, and I regret I wasn't there, with them before. So I'm good with when you're ready to take a motion. Once Laura steps back.
Great.
But just while we're waiting, Dan, you talk about board to board. We've already done it. Like, there was board to board. I know it was only 3 members, but there was board to board, and there was no movement on the notion of opening up anything else. I'm waiting for anyone here to correct me on that.
You know what? And maybe that's one meeting with the North Reading Board of Selectmen, but I want to hear from them.
Okay.
Unless you're authorized to speak on behalf of the North Reading Board of Selectmen, sir.
I can just speak relative to this. I know there's been talk of appointing a subcommittee. And I believe that's one of the differences between the two towns. I think the 2 selectmen that came to the meetings over last summer and last fall from North Reading were representing the Board of Selectmen. Now, my understanding from the town of Andover is that's not the same structure here.
We had some communication problems.
Well, no,
When it comes to the North Reading Board of Selectmen, they believe that they were basically negotiating in good faith, and that's how we came to these terms. So again, there's a divide on, I think, a number of issues.
Right, and while we're waiting, we're waiting for Laura to come back for the vote, but I think that's an important point to make, which is North Reading voted on and officially appointed a subcommittee. Andover did not. Andover's Chairman Salafi on the phone here decided that he and Selectwoman Gregory would be effectively the subcommittee, but this board never voted. I just want that to be clear for the record since you just brought it up.
My point, I do not know how North Reading's 2 members got appointed. I was not there to know that they were voted as an official subcommittee. I'm not sure that we have that.
As I listened to them, they did confirm that as subcommittee.
Okay.
And when we typically do this type of thing, sir, typically it's the subcommittee that works through the details. The subcommittee makes a recommendation, but the final decision is made by the board. So, it's not the subcommittee's authority to commit to anything or reject anything. Their job is to assess and bring it back.
And I'll agree that we agree on that point. If you look back to our September 5th town meeting, or board meeting, the 3 members that were not part of the subcommittee were pretty close to voting 3-2 to
Go to the
basically
MWR?
say we're going to the MWR.
Yeah, no, I saw it. I watched it.
I mean, it is, in terms of that's a very similar. So
Yeah.
the subcommittee came back, did a report, and then the vote was close. Some members of the
Yeah.
audience, the finance committee spoke up,
Yeah.
and they agreed to postpone that vote, so.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just want to be clear on one thing before we vote. I think there's an issue with process by kind of rushing this one. I don't think town meeting is going to accept something without a termination provision. But more importantly, I would never support a 99-year deal with some type of out or termination provision. So I just want to be clear before we vote.
And I just think we have to have some more discussion about it, and it all depends upon, what North Reading feels, and what we feel, and whatnot, and, there's been many a times I've walked into a meeting with one thought on an issue, and said I was gonna vote this way, and I changed my mind and voted another way, and sometimes when I've walked into a meeting with one thought on an issue, I've walked out and not had the opportunity to vote on it. So, that's the value of board discussion, is to have that robust discussion. I mean,
have
we're
to have
we're as
that
good
as
as
soon
the,
as possible.
as good as the team.
We can meet as early as Thursday.
And you requested that?
I
Well, I
sent the
think
chair
we need to
an email
vote on the
and
motion.
requested
Well,
theirs.
that we do.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if the board, our board can be available on Thursday at 7, let's have that further discussion. And then let's see if we can get ASAP with North Reading. And, you know, if North Reading wants to have the discussion with us, great. You know, if North Reading chooses not to, then there's our answer right there. And, you know, and I think that this is mutually beneficial, this deal. So I would hope that they want to. I would think they would.
Okay, any other discussion? Paul, any other discussion on this particular item before we take a vote?
No, actually, I'm okay. I've been listening an awful lot, trying not to contribute too much because, well, I've contributed a lot to this already. But I'd like to, I mean, I think Dan's point of possibly having a fund is actually might be a pretty good idea. I don't think we need North Reading's buy-in particularly for that. We could do that on our own. It would be our money. But I think it's actually a way to mitigate what might be some long-term issues that we could be perceived to have. So
Yeah, but
I think it's not a bad idea to look at some of those things. I'm not sure that North Reading Board of Selectmen is going to want to meet again and discuss a whole bunch of new terms. I didn't get that sense, but that doesn't mean, Dan, let me just finish because you made a good point in that it doesn't mean that North Reading wouldn't look at some additional points that we may want to propose to them. And I think Andrew said it earlier, and I think Laura and I both would concur that this allows us to negotiate terms. I mean, we have the framework, and then I don't believe that they're willing to do a whole lot in the framework. It took 6 months and a lot of hard discussion to get there, but I do believe that if something was beneficial or would clarify terms moving forward, I think that they would be very open to that. I don't see why they wouldn't be.
well,
Especially if it's beneficial to them or us, whatever.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, Paul.
No,
Please. So, you know, I have a little different of an opinion. I mean, this board, I think, gave up a lot of its negotiating power over the last 6 months, 8 months, whatever it may be. You know, I think
It goes back further than that, Dan.
Right.
Just for the record,
Yeah.
we're not going to spend time on that, but it
So-
goes back a long.
Yep, you're right, it does. So anyway, I think, though, that a benefit of clearly defining what is in and what is out removes or gives us more negotiating power. So that, let's just say, you know, the town meeting gives us the approval to move forward, and then we're sitting across the table, and then Andrew is presented with, well, we don't want you to have any type of reserve fund, mitigation fund, and we're like, well, we were thinking about doing that. You know, so this gives us a little bit more power back, where we clearly say, this is what's in, this is what's out, and these are non-negotiable moving forward. So that gives us a little bit of...
Good for clarity at town meeting.
Yeah, but I mean, it's good for clarity, it's good for clarity, for direction to this board and to the town manager as well. Because again, it goes to trust. You know, do you trust your board, so to speak, to make the right decision and enter into a 99-year agreement? I mean, I'd rather see what's in and what's out expanded a bit more so that we can say, as long as you're working in that framework, the only thing you're doing is you're updating the fine print.
In
The
the
lawyers are
final
looking at it.
document.
Yeah.
Okay, so to do that, we've got to, I think we're just going to
Special
take
town
this
meeting.
vote, and then we've got
So
to, if whatever
we got
the...
to have a special town meeting vote, and then we can certainly propose something to
I
North
think-
Reading
I think we
to meet with us. I'm not sure if they will or they won't,
I
but we
think-
need to have the framework of the town meeting.
I think what Dan is saying is, we need to have a special town, we need to meet with them as soon as possible.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, I'd like to call for the
We
vote
can-
at the,
We
given
can
the
propose
hours.
that to them.
Can we just refresh what we're voting on, just because we've had a long discussion here? It's a
The
vote.
motion was for a, Laura, do you want to repeat the motion?
Was for the board to call a special town meeting for the authorization for special legislation for the agreement with North Reading for potable water service, and that said meeting would go forward on the 4th of April, 2018, and also that the board would sign the warrant for said special town meeting.
They close the warrant.
And close the warrant tonight. So that's probably a slight modification, so I probably need a second.
Okay, that's fine.
And I seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Take a roll call vote. All in favor, Bob?
No.
Dan?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes,
Paul?
Yes.
Alex, yes. Okay, passes 4-1.